Right. Are we live? Do I have sound? I seriously need to get some music so that these intros aren't as awkward as they are. They're pretty awkward and they're going to stay awkward. I'm going to make sure of that. But I really need intro music. You got to hit something up on the royalty free side of things. And I got to turn this around. I don't like these super cold intros. It doesn't work for me. That don't work for me, brother. Let me make sure I have sound before we get into what we're here to talk about. Okay, I guess I can hear myself talking. So that tells me that all of you can hear me talking. What's going on, guys? Happy Tuesday. Glad to be back with you guys again on a Tuesday. I know you guys joined me last week on a Monday. Appreciated that. With the holiday coming down, the new year, we had a lot going on at the end of last week, but I was still happy that I was able to get a show to you guys and get you guys set up. And we had a little bit of fun looking at some of the things that we want for the upcoming year, looking back, all that good New Year stuff. And then we've had a transition, seemingly, back into wrestling over the last week or so. We're going to talk about all that. I'm going to break down, not really Raw per se, because this isn't a Raw review show. We used to do the Raw reviews. Maybe we'll do them again some days, but that's not really what I was looking to get into. There we go. No. For me, I think I just want to break down some elements out of that main event last night coming out of Raw, because that was, for me, that was like by far the most interesting part of Raw last night. And Raw, let's be honest, wasn't exactly the most interesting of shows last night. In fact, it was a god awful show. But it was newsworthy and noteworthy nonetheless, but it was still god awful. So we'll break that down. Where the hell's my chat? There you are. All right. And as always, speaking of chats, if you would like, go ahead and send a chat in. We can't do the supers yet until more of you are subscribed. So please subscribe, like, share, tell your friends, tell your family, tell anyone and everyone that you know about this show happening usually every Tuesday. Might have some more news coming up. I think there's some sleepy fight fans, if you catch my drift. Hint, hint, wink, wink, if you know what I mean. There may be a comeback of said things. Stay tuned to this channel. Stay tuned to all the channels where you normally find me. Was that a cryptic enough of a statement there? I mean, if you've been paying attention, you'll know what I'm talking about. But if not, you're probably completely lost at this point, and I apologize for that. All right, let's pop open the ice cold cola once again. Midweek, got a little bit of a drive ahead of me after this. So, shout out swig of soda for the working man and women. Yeah. All right. So to the extent that like WWE has seasons, this past week was the season premiere of WWE. Now, part of the thing that the promotion and wrestling is always sold on is that it's this year-round extravaganza. I mean, after all, that's why it's such a valuable TV product and commands such high rights fees. But there are no seasons. We know that, and it's always a continuous story. With that said, we had a bit of a reset on both of the major shows this past week. When it came to SmackDown, it wasn't exactly the most newsworthy and noteworthy show. You see some things happened, as you can see to my left. But there were a lot of returns and debuts. We had Cardona showing up as Cardona. Very cool. Got a lot of thoughts on that. Don't know if I'll get into them here, but I do have a lot of thoughts on that. We had Randy Orton returning. Randy Orton always returns, doesn't he? I feel like we're constantly in this cycle of Randy Orton returns. Probably since 2016. Probably about a decade. Ever since Brock came back to concuss him and Orton came back as a return from there. Ever since that whole time period, I feel like Orton is mostly a return. He's a return in an RKO since then. It's a good spot to be. That's most of what he's done. Although I think in this current run that he's in, he'll probably be very close to the title picture, depending on what happens on Friday night, which kind of bookends this season-long debut week of WWE. The other thing that came into play on Friday was the reemergence of the dreaded 3-hour SmackDowns. Now, I spent most of my time watching wrestling, I feel like, complaining about dreaded 3-hour Raws. But as bad as 3-hour Raws can be, I can't think of anything worse than a 3-hour SmackDown on a Friday. That has to be the worst night, including Saturday and Sunday, for any 3-hour wrestling show. Like, unless it's some late night kind of thing that you're really into. But even at that, like, if you have 3 hours on a Friday night, I don't know, get some kids, get a date, do something. Do something if you have nothing else to do. Then again, I am speaking to a room full of wrestling fans, present company included. So there might not be too much of a social life out there. Now, Raw had a lot going on as well. As you could see in the upper left-hand corner of my screen, it was the big Stranger Things crossover with Raw. I'm not a Stranger Things viewer, so I know nothing about the show. The only thing I know, it's some kind of homage to the 80s. It has roots in the 80s. And every time there's anything public about Stranger Things, it feels like Metallica gets a shout out, which I'm all about that. So I approve all those things related to Stranger Things. I've just never seen an episode. But based on everyone who has and everyone who was watching last night, I don't really get what the gimmick was last night. Like, you had those title cards going back in from commercial breaks, which there was a ton of commercial breaks on Raw last night. Raw is commercial might have been the biggest story coming out of last night. But other than that, you had like the entrances decorated. You had the intro with Michael Cole and Corey Graves getting out of the van and all that. But it was not some big crossover. Like, you didn't have the proverbial, and I don't know who these guys would be these days, but you didn't have like the Chavo Guerreros or the Hornswoggles interacting with them. I think The Miz, I know he's on SmackDown, but The Miz is generally the guy to job to the celebrities. That seems to have been his role for like the last 10 years. So he would have been the guy had he been on this show and they were doing that. Like, he's the guy that would have had the weird interaction with the Stranger Things, like monsters or something. I don't even know what those things are. I really don't. I feel very naive. I feel like all you Stranger Things fans obviously know a lot more about this than me. But as I said earlier, like, SmackDown's gone to 3 hours, and Raw on Monday the 5th had like a 3-hour feel to it. It was a comatose show. There's a lot of noteworthy things that were happening throughout the show, but everything was just kind of in half speed. Yeah, we got confirmation of Gunther and AJ coming up, and people are kind of mad about how soon it's happening. You had multiple new champions on the women's side of thing. Becky Lynch, Rhea, and Io. Io, not Riho, Io. They all strapped up. So we have some new blood there. And we had a debut, I think. I still don't know if Javon Evans ever debuted. I know he was on the show. No idea. No idea if he ever debuted. But he was on the show. And he's a part of the Raw roster now. So do with that what you will. No, Raw had a comatose 3-hour, boring 2019 feel to it for most of the evening on Monday night. And then we got to our main event, which you could tell by the time they went to it that they were going to give this thing its time. Now, everybody had a lot of different expectations for Punk versus Bron. This whole thing has been a referendum on both guys, where they stand, where we're going to be going forward, a referendum on Triple H's booking, the main event scene. Is Bron Breakker ready? Does CM Punk still have it? All of those things were discussed, and there was a lot going on. And then there was a lot of debate about what the outcome of this match should be. Is there going to be a big interference spot that leads to the next angles going into WrestleMania? Is this the time on the first show of the year, on the anniversary on Netflix, and the Stranger Things crossover, and all those big things? Was this the time to put the belt on Bron Breakker? A lot of people had that as an argument. And it's a little bit difficult because we have another title match, a major title match, 3 Stages of Hell, a little bit later in the week. So you have to balance all of these booking considerations when making these predictions. I don't know, though, if anyone quite expected what we got. Everyone had expectations of Punk and Breakker. Nobody quite expected this. I don't think anybody expected a damn near half-hour match, which had plenty of run-ins and shenanigans and everything you expect for the modern WWE main event, but also had the babyface winning clean. I didn't have that happening. No way I had that happening. And so I'll admit it too. I kind of got sucked into this. I did. I got sucked in since the beginning, since the intros. Since CM Punk came out there in that Steiner Brother inspired jacket, I thought that was great. Wearing the gym shirt prior to that to complete the trolling cycle. I thought that was great. I thought the way that Cole and Graves were framing it early on as a big fight, I thought the video packages were really good. And then I kind of got sucked into the match once it got going. Had a very, very slow start. Most matches that I consider good tend to have very slow starts, and I think that just overall helps with the pacing. But I got sucked in. We had this match on Monday, 3 Stages of Hell on Friday, and Gunther and AJ next week. If you ask me, WWE can't book a pay-per-view this month in terms of singles matches because they're booking the Royal Rumble, which will have 2 massive Rumble matches. It's not like they have a ton of singles matches on pay-per-views anyway. But it seems as if they have nothing else to do with these people, and all they can ever know how to do is build 3 to 4 week-long feuds that culminate in a big match. Now, obviously, Cody and Drew, they've been feuding for like a decade. Punk and Bron is fairly new. AJ and Gunther, fairly new. So we're getting TV programs with pay-per-view style payoffs. And like I said, they had me on this one. Wasn't a totally clean finish, but it was an absolute definitive finish. Definitive meaning there is no controversy from a kayfabe standpoint related to CM Punk's victory. If anything, this was not an idea of the babyface who slipped out of there with the victory, who overcame all this cheating and did his thing opportunistic. No. He overcame it all. He overcame all these odds, did Punk, but it was definitive in the end. Like, if you watch that and you don't know anything about the work nature and all the stuff that is going on, you would say that the little 48-year-old guy is a better wrestler than the big, beefy Bron Breakker. How's that for your alliteration? So we have to deal with that result. And I think we have that result for one simple reason. From a kayfabe perspective, one thing now is very, very clear. The vision freaking sucks. What is the point of the vision at this point? I'm being a little cheeky, but I'm being a little serious with that. In kayfabe, why would anybody want to be with the vision? To recap, once obtaining helping Seth Rollins obtain the title over a cash-in on CM Punk. So you have the guy whose title has been delivered to him. They then turn on him after he successfully defends that title. They turn on him. Their boss, Paul Heyman, doesn't even get any of the guys into the Battle Royal to determine the next champ. So they have great management from a kayfabe perspective. And then they go into Survivor Series, and they're supposed to be this big unified unit over here. And what happens? What happens to them at Survivor Series? That wasn't the worst in the world, but what happened? Are we taking over anything? I don't think so. Not to mention, that was like the worst Survivor Series maybe ever. I had some people saying it was the worst pay-per-view ever. I don't know if I would go that far, but it was definitely a lo-fi event. Now, I had that wrong. I actually had them losing the War Games match because all I can remember is the post-game, but I looked it up. Yeah, they won the War Games. So, hey, they won War Games. They were in good position. They got someone a title shot. All right, you got Bron Breakker a title shot. And despite having the man advantage, despite being the evil heel group, despite having the mastermind and Paul Heyman, CM Punk and a few luchadors were able to hold off all of these guys. This might be part of a bigger story that they're telling with Bron Breakker, and certainly probably is part of a bigger story that they're telling with Seth Rollins. But as things stand right now in early January of 2026, this is a completely useless group that should have no credibility anywhere. You never know. When people change and move groups, there's always considerations. And these groups can kind of ebb and flow. The group may start out horribly and end up great. The group may end up horribly. The group may start out the group may start out great, end up horribly. The group may start out horribly and end up great. I'm seeing this though right now, considering the injury that had happened and everything else around the booking. This is not looking like Rhea Dom era Judgment Day. This is looking like Finn Dom, like Raquel Carlito era Judgment Day. Nobody wants that for your faction. Nobody wants to be living in the good old glory days. When it comes to the Vision, though, there's not even any good old glory days. Like, what was the glory day? The Survivor Series win that I kind of couldn't remember earlier? Was that what it is? Paul Heyman has to be the fall guy. He has to be, right? It's all him. This organization did really, really well when it was just Punk and Heyman. They start expanding, you start bringing in these outsiders, just dilutes everything. I guess Matt Morgan and Nathan Jones and Ryback and Curtis Axel and Heidenreich haven't taught anyone any lessons. But that wasn't the only story coming out of it. There's a little more meta story that I thought was pretty interesting. That's from the kayfabe perspective and the usefulness of the Vision. But from a meta and all other things perspective, one of the narratives came away from this past Monday was that maybe, just maybe, in small doses, CM Punk still has it. Now, I don't know if CM Punk ever really lost it, to be honest with you. He's just felt so mid for about 6 months. The character's been uninteresting. The promos have been repetitive. The matches have been all right. His match with Gunther at SummerSlam was amazing. The matches have been pretty good, but everything about him feels a little aged, feels a little dated. And you've got, Kevin Nash going on podcasts saying he's got to get himself in better shape. You've got Punk on... What's going on there? There we are. I'll show you that in a second. So, yeah, we've got Nash telling Punk he's got to get in better shape. We have Punk trolling Nash at live events. We have Nash responding in kind. There's all of that going on just with that. Then you've got the actual perception of CM Punk, which has never been the best coming out of AEW. I think it was rehabbed a little bit in early 2024 by AEW airing the footage and all of that and Tony Khan's media campaign around then. I think Punk's overall worth started to get raised throughout 2024 in WWE. And he was injured for part of the year, so that kind of put a little bit of mystique to him in the Drew feud. 2025 was almost the inverse. Post-WrestleMania, there's been this sort of fatigue with Punk. There's been this realization of his age. And there's been a lot of shaming of Punk from his hypocrisy, from things he said in the past. It's been a rough year for Punk. Punk needs, let's be honest, Punk needs a year of good PR. I don't think Punk's any different now than he used to be necessarily. If you don't like him now, maybe you don't like the person who's always been that way. You're just seeing a different side of him. That's for you to decide. Regardless, when you think about it, outside of the stuff with AEW, and again, I'll say this till the cows come home, he absolutely deserved to get fired from AEW. I don't think any reasonable person would argue otherwise. With that said, there became a time where we're associating Punk with the most irreconcilable people in pro wrestling. And I don't know that we necessarily have evidence to the case of that. And then you have him just being this old kind of corporate guy the last year. And that hasn't been the funnest thing in the world. CM Punk needs a year where all we're talking about is his promos. Where all we're talking about is his matches. Where all we're talking about is his storylines. He needs a year of good PR. This was a hell of a way to start it. To prove that you are the guy working with the young guy who's never really had the major match. This was a big, big spot for him, and he delivered. Now, how much are they going to continue to rely on Punk going forward remains to be seen. The guy is almost 50 years old, which puts him right about the middle of the main event scene, but he's still that age. And how much further are you going to go with him? Is he supposed to be the guy to just put everyone over? I talked about it a couple weeks ago. It was kind of his job to make Bron in this feud. And I think he did a very, very good job with that. I don't think Bron's a made guy by any stretch. But I think Punk did everything he could to put him over and still provide entertainment. Like, he wouldn't bend the knee, but he also didn't bury him in any of the promos. And the promos were pretty heated. The one thing I will say Punk has got to work on, and maybe this was just a safety issue, but did you guys see, and it's a little fuzzy here, did you guys see this pile driver? Shout out to the announce team. Very, very much shout out to the announce team for proclaiming that CM Punk did not get all of this pile driver. I don't know if pile drivers are still banned. I knew they were in 2013 when Punk and Cena did that in their Raw match. I think pile drivers either need to be banned for Punk because they look so bad, or Punk should be the only guy that gives a pile driver because that might be the safest pile driver ever. Now, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but Bron Breakker really likes landing on his neck. He does it quite often. So I get it. Punk is trying to not have like the third incident associated with Punk and Punk and Bron and neck injuries. So I'm glad he protected him. But holy hell, if that's how you got to do this move, then maybe we don't need to be doing this move at all. Maybe the pile driver can go back to being banned, or where it possibly, probably, ultimately belongs. But for at least one night, CM Punk said he still got it. Now, the other element of last night, which I think is very relevant today, and the main reason why people have interest in the outcome last night, was what does this mean for Bron Breakker? Regardless of the outcome and everything that was going on last night, no matter what happened with CM Punk, he would have ultimately been okayed. He's a made guy. Bron Breakker, while coming across like a chosen one and having many tools that would justify that proclamation, is not. He's still a little bit green, if you will. Still a little inexperienced. We saw a couple months ago when he was going back and forth with Roman Reigns, it didn't quite fit. He didn't quite look like the main eventer that he always looks like. All of a sudden, he's contrasting with other main eventers, and maybe he couldn't exactly swim in that pool, or at least that was the perception. He takes the loss here. He takes a relatively clean loss. If anything, he had all the heelish advantage in this match, and he didn't get it done. in kayfabe, as I said, he is not as good of a wrestler as CM Punk. That kind of blows all of our minds, but it just kind of is what it is. And I don't think that what happened last night was a career death blow. Traditionally, you don't like to see the guy that is on the rise, and not initially on the rise. This isn't like John Cena taking on Brock Lesnar at Backlash in 2003, which was, what did we figure out a couple weeks ago? John Cena's like third ever singles pay-per-view opponent. Bron Breakker isn't at that stage. When you're at that stage, simply showing up in the main event may be good enough. But people who have a little more main event, like untouchable potential, tend to be kept away from there until they're ready to go with them and they're ready to fire off. The example that people like to give, and I think it really makes sense. What if Austin doesn't beat Michaels at WrestleMania 14? Does any part of the Attitude Era even make sense if that happens? Does Austin remain as over as he does? No. All of those things are the case. A little bit different with Bron because he happens to be a heel. But regardless, this was sort of being built, and at least built up in discourse away from the show, as the moment for Bron Breakker. And when you don't get it done in your moment, I feel like there's a little bit of a stigma that might stick to you. And I think my main takeaway here is that Triple H and the WWE creative team, they need to be very careful here. I honestly think between now and WrestleMania, the future of Bron Breakker as a top tier main event talent may be in the balance. Now, it's not to say that last night's result was a death knell, but it just means that they're going to have to proceed with caution and care. Triple H likes to pride himself on the stories he tells, the long term stories that he likes to tell. Usually WrestleMania to WrestleMania. Hell, the champions are rarely allowed to even lose or drop the titles in between those two dates. Kind of a big issue with the overall promotion, but we'll talk about that on another day. So I have no doubt that there is a big story that's being planned here. I shouldn't say I have no doubt. I have some doubts. I'll get to that in a minute. But in the course of all that storytelling, in the course of what's going to be a pretty packed WrestleMania season, they need to be aware to not lose Bron Breakker in the shuffle of things. Now, again, I have no doubt that he will have a prominent match at WrestleMania. You may even argue this now makes him a big favorite for the Saudi Rumble. I would think that's a pretty safe bet, although there's tons of candidates and no one candidate has really emerged, and we haven't even really got to declaration season just yet. I'm sure in the next week or two, we're going to be knee deep in declaring our intentions to enter the Royal Rumble, the Saudi Rumble. Not the greatest Royal Rumble. We already had that one in Saudi Arabia. This is just like a goodest Royal Rumble. And with everything going on in WWE in these next couple of months, they do run a risk, though, of Bron Breakker being a little bit lost in the shuffle. Even if he's in a prominent spot, he's gonna be crowded out if he's not one of the like 2-night main events. Which, at this point, I don't see him as that, but it's a possibility. It definitely could happen. And how is that presented? He's already feuding for the secondary championship, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think that's hurt Gunther one bit for laying a lot of claim to that title. And I don't think that Jey Uso brought down the title so much that it has that level of dissipation from the main title. If anything, I think in the last year, the two titles have become closer because Cody and Cena, believe it or not, were not seen as untouchable as much as Roman Reigns was. And even though this year has Seth Rollins holding this title and having an injury, we are far enough away from the Seth Rollins being permanently injured while holding this title and claiming this to be the workhorse wrestle every night title. So at least we're beyond that. With that said, these aren't the most ideal circumstances for Bron Breakker. I also question, from a kayfabe perspective, his character alignment. Are they trying to make him a big babyface going into WrestleMania? If so, who's his opponent? Are you gonna do Brock Lesnar? Are you gonna do Gunther? Are you gonna do someone connected to the vision that he ends up turning on? Because at this point, he's got like the cheaters who don't help him. He's got Heyman who kept him out of a match earlier. Like he has no reason to be happy with the vision at all. And they have been telling a little bit of that story. So I'm sure we're going to get some follow-up to that. I'm sure we are. Although, and I hate that I have to say this, I think we might be in an era where like we can't assume that there's a plan for every big thing. Now, famously in the Vince era, plans would change, stuff would be short-sighted, stuff like all of these criticisms we have now of current WWE creative. We had a lot of those criticisms throughout the Vince era. So again, and I shouldn't have to say this, being critical of Triple H does not imply I want Vince to come back. Okay? Have we cleared that up? Thank you. All right. Now, with that said, we are coming off of a year where you had potentially the biggest wrestling storyline of all time that they did not have a plan for. You had the once-in-a-generation chance to turn your ultimate babyface of 20 years heel. And you did it for the moment. You did it to sell some tickets in Canada. You did it to pop a Rock appearance. That's what you did it for. You didn't have a solid plan, and by the looks of it, you never really came up with one. Hell, even the back half of that run didn't really seem like it had a real plan. They were just booking it on the fly. They cannot do that with Bron Breakker. They need to have all the care in the world put into this. He can't just be the awesome badass and he'll just live off that aura. No, there needs to be a plan, care taken, opponent taken. He's not Drew McIntyre. So right now, Drew McIntyre hardly ever wins matches despite being at the top of the card. That can't be the case with Bron Breakker. The die is not yet cast with Breakker, and we don't want him to be like a main event loser either. So they have to be really careful of how they frame him going forward. And again, given recent events, I don't know if they necessarily have a plan. Hope they do. Believe that they do, but I can't say it for sure. And there better be a plan. There better be a plan. Because if all of this was just to have a program with Punk, so the big first of the year Raw can have a big match on it like it did last year with Seth Rollins, then the loss was completely unnecessary. Completely unnecessary. If it's one chapter in a greater story that's going to have a hell of a payoff, which is I'm sure what Triple H would say in response to any of these criticisms, then so be it. If not, it was just, quite frankly, punitive to Bron. And I don't think they feel that way about him. So give him the benefit of the doubt for now. Where's my cola at? Been a little quiet, E. Where you been? All right. What do we got going on here? So that was Raw. And there was a lot of other things that happened on Raw. There was the trailer for the new season of the Unreal series. This is a weird dynamic that we're living in with this Unreal series, isn't it? It's like the big focus is going to be on the fully worked injury of Seth Rollins. I hope they put in the karma of him actually getting injured very shortly after in there. I don't know if it was the karma, but it was just, there was something satisfying about that blowing, not for Seth, but that blowing up in WWE's face. There was something satisfying about the whole working the boys. That seems to be a major plot point, along with a few other creative things that people have been wondering about. It looks like Naomi is going to address the walkout just a little bit. It's just its own kayfabe. It's WWE's reality kayfabe. It's honestly the vision that Vince Russo kind of always wanted for wrestling. It's coming in, not in Juggalo Championship Wrestling. I think it's coming in WWE Unreal. And it adds another layer of how you analyze the product. Is this, we look at, oh, this is for the casual fans, this is for the hardcore fans, this is for their loyal fans, this is to attract new fans. There's going to be whole storylines and backstage stuff. We got the truth stuff that they talk about that we're going to have to analyze. Oh, this is an Unreal storyline. This is done for Unreal. And eventually, hopefully, we get a radar to them. And any like backstage news that clearly is going to end up as an Unreal theme later, we get a little bit of literacy for that. I don't know when we're going to do that, but we definitely need it. Now, speaking of creative, there was some announcements this week about what the current construction of the creative team and the org chart. Nothing too surprising there. You got Paul Levesque running everything. You got Bruce Pritchard supervising things. You got Ed Koskey implementing the corporate vision. And over on SmackDown, it looks like we still got Road Dogg in a position of authority. Now, I love when Road Dogg is in charge of SmackDown. It's one of my favorite things. It's when you have Road Dogg defending himself on Twitter. You've got AJ Styles defending Road Dogg on Twitter. You have Fire Road Dogg trending every now and then. That's always fun. That's always a fun thing to engage with. So people definitely like dunking on Road Dogg in creative. But the fact that he's even in creative right now, and the fact that any member of the New Age Outlaws is welcome in the WWE confines is still pretty amazing when you think about it. Why am I bringing all of this up? Why am I focusing so much on Road Dogg? Well, it's actually not Road Dogg who I want to focus on. I actually want to focus on both of them, but in particular, Kip James. Badass Billy Gunn. Why do I want to focus on this today? Well, and maybe you should really ask yourself, why is there a picture of the Voodoo Kin Mafia in the upper left-hand corner of your screen? Well, the reason why I'm bringing up Road Dogg, Billy Gunn, Kip James, Brian James, all the Jameses in the world, the James gang, the reason why I'm bringing them up is because we passed a great anniversary. There's always these anniversaries of big shows, anniversaries of big moments, anniversaries of milestones. We passed the anniversary of that one shoot video where the New Age Outlaws completely bury where the New Age Outlaws completely bury Triple H, China, and WWE in general. We just hit the 20-year anniversary of that clip hitting the internet. Now, a lot has changed in those 20 years. A lot has changed. But I kind of wanted to have a little fun with this and go down memory lane and look at like the most incendiary part of what they said in that shoot that happened 20 years ago. So what I'm going to do, I'm not even going to put on the hat. I'll put on the bald man cans. I don't usually like wearing the headset anymore. That's the thing. When it's like Nocturnal Knockout, no, that ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna work. I got a hat up. All right. There we go. If I'm gonna have the headsets on, I gotta have a hat on. It's the law. I can't be looking like SVP over here. I'm sorry. It ain't gonna happen. Okay. So, as I was saying, I wanted to hear the Outlaws, the Voodoo Kin Mafia, if you will. I wanted to hear them in their own words. So let's play a little bit of them in their own words. Now, if you would like, but I do not support the creator, you can go ahead and buy this shoot video that happened in 20 years and get the full context of everything. And a lot of it exists online. I am simply going to refer to a pretty famous clip that exists online that really cuts out the core of what they were talking about. So I'll play quite a bit of it. I'm going to stop it every now and then and comment on some of the things that are said. But hopefully the audio is playing here and you can hear it. But here are the Voodoo Kin Mafia 20 years ago talking about Triple H and China. So there, Road Dogg just says that Triple H and China used to ride with him, but they don't. They stub their nose at him because he does drugs. And he's doing drugs right now. And he's very messed up. He also tells the kids not to do drugs. Okay. So Billy Gunn is waiting to get in there, right? He said, "Oh yeah," you can hear him. He's like the Kool-Aid man getting in on if he can talk shit on trips. But I think Road Dogg's about to comment on Triple H's appearance. So to recap, you got Road Dogg saying, "What's with that freaking mustache?" Billy Gunn saying he's a freaking idiot, and Road Dogg saying he seconded it. You sure about that, Billy Gunn? If you were to see Triple H early '06, you would beat his brains in? Okay. Trips, you snitch. Why did you not let the New Age Outlaws just do drugs? Like you hired the New Age Outlaws in the '90s so they can do drugs, right? That's the only point of having them on your show. All right, we got to break down this line. Bad things will happen to bad people, and that MFer is going to pass me on the way down. That reminds me in Wrestling with Shadows when Bret Hart's wife at the time tells Triple H, someday there's going to be a reckoning. Someday you're going to pay. I think everyone who's waiting on that Triple H reckoning, the best you're going to get is a bunch of us losers on podcasts talking about his mid booking. That's about as far as that guy's going to fall. Now, to be clear, he almost like passed away a couple of years ago atop the WWE and was seemingly like exiled. That was kind of a way down. And obviously that was a big personal thing. And I know that like Stephanie has said that was a very traumatic thing. So I don't want to make light of that. But what the hell is it? When the hell is Triple H ever going to be on the way down? When is Triple H ever going to get what's coming to him? I love it. They're wrestling with shadows there. Like, she's there telling him like someday it's gonna come back to you. It's good. And I think morally she was absolutely right in that moment. I just have it because the whole time he's there with his head down and he's just saying, "I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry you feel that way." And now we know the context. He's the one that kind of thought of the screw job. The famous line that I know everyone wants to take credit for it, but I just feel that just sounds like Triple H's voice whenever he says, "F that. If he doesn't want to do business, we'll do business for him." That seems like a very Loveck line, doesn't it? And back in '97 in Wrestling with Shadows, when Brett's wife is telling him off, I'm sure he's just thinking in his head like, hmm, well, Steph, she's finishing college. I can marry her. Then I'll be in the family. He's thinking that then. Now back in like '99 when he's talking about the outlaws doing drugs, and well, let me say like yeah, they're not telling him anything there. Now in like 2006, Billy Gunn thinks he's gonna see him on the way down. Does he think like what's gonna happen? So he's gonna get caught in some kind of scandal, and Steph's gonna divorce him, and Vince is gonna kick him out of the company. He's gonna be like the Steinbrenner kids, the Steinbrenner like son-in-laws. He's gonna get kicked down there, and then he's gonna like need to work some shots in Impact, I guess, to recover, pay his alimony, and that's where Billy Gunn was gonna get him his comeuppance. Gotcha. Wait, so why is it that he's gonna be in the airport? He's gonna pass him in the airport. That's what it is. Okay, I got Billy Gunn's logic here. He's gonna pass him in the airport because they're both on the way down, obviously. But Billy Gunn stays down. But they're both. But before that, private jets, company jet, all the luxurious lifestyle. I think Triple H always traveled pretty well, especially once he really achieved his top status, and others didn't always want to travel with him because he's very very high maintenance. But I guess they've fallen on hard times, and the New Age Outlaws and Triple H are both at like a Frontier Airlines terminal, and that's where Billy Gunn is going to beat up Trips. That's pretty messed up. What a complaint. I think everyone who ever worked with Triple H probably didn't like that he talked for 20 minutes as you paced behind him. I don't know. I feel like Flair had a good way in the Reign of Terror of just making himself look cool. Is it Conan the one always famous in WCW? He'd always be standing just close enough to Hogan to make sure he's in the shot in the NWO and always flexing just enough. That's how you do it. That's not nice. That's not great. Ooh, what's he got to say about Randy Orton? Was it that he had to film a movie? What was he? What had he been filming in '04? What was Triple? Was that like one of those Blade movies that he was in, and we got all the DVD extras of how great of an actor he was? Was that then, or is Billy a little confused? Was the real reason what we've all thought it for years is because Orton needed to be the youngest champion ever to take that title off of Brock, and then they did screw him over. They're not wrong about that, but like thinking about that, they're probably thinking. Well, we'll hear what they're thinking. That's another one because undoubtedly they are correct. And I don't know how much influence Triple H had over this, but the way Orton was handled in late '04 permanently put him in second place behind Cena, or it was Batista at the time. And then I think but either way, regardless of what guy you're talking about, which of those top two cornerstone guys, the whole program with Triple H that fall is always put him just that slight tier below them. And then beyond that, his own new age outlaw like behavior, I think also contributed to that for a while, although he was still getting a lot of pushes during that era. But it's funny because that's another one like, and again, I think Triple H undoubtedly probably did some harm to Randy Orton's career with all of that. I just talked about Randy Orton coming back and possibly being in the main event 20 years later. And be like the most over guy on the show. So I think he survived, but fair point. All right. Well, that was how the Voodoo Kin Mafia felt 20 years ago. Before we get to what Billy has to say about it these days, let's look at what our old friend from the Pro Wrestling Torch, Wade Keller, had to say about it at the time. All right, it's a little big. Let me adjust that so it's on the screen a little more for you guys. There it is. All right, let me pull this thing up. I had zero sympathy for Kip Billy Gunn James' comments about Triple H. He said Triple H added him for smoking and shooting up in bathrooms. They asked why Hunter would say something like that. If Hunter said it, if he knew it wasn't true, that would be wrong. If he said it because it was true, Hunter was protecting the family business. Kip was given chance after chance to get over, but no matter the gimmick or the opponent, he didn't have memorable matches or laudable promos. Straight fire from Wade on that one. Now, BG James making fun of Hunter's mustache was kind of funny. But gosh, at least Hunter doesn't wear a loose shirt to the ring every time he wrestles to cover his gut. Just another haymaker by Wade. I was surprised to see them coming out so strongly against Hunter publicly, since it's burning a bridge to be sure. Then again, maybe they both concluded their odds of being asked back to the WWF are virtually zero anyway. A hell of a comment there by Wade. Just taking swipes at both guys. All right, Billy Gunn, you weren't over enough. You didn't have the great promos. True. I mean, I think we found out later on, and then some of the physical elements he had with the as well. Billy Gunn was just a tag team wrestler. Like he just should have been like a great tag team wrestler. And then on Road Dogg, let's see this line. But gosh, at least Hunter doesn't wear a loose. But gosh, at least Hunter doesn't wear a loose shirt to the ring every time he wrestles to cover his gut. But yeah, Road Dogg will never get accused of being a body guy, right? Like Road Dogg definitely will fail some drug tests over the years, but he's never going to fail like an actual wellness test, like the performance enhancing ones, right? Good call there, right, Wade. And that's interesting because I remember, now, obviously, Wade's a more mature person than I am in general, but I remember when this was happening 20 years ago and getting these clips through the internet and just loving it. Like this just put it in my veins. All the Triple H smack talk put it in my veins. Believe it to the adult in the room, Wade Keller, to just point out like some of the ridiculousness in some of the things they were saying. I mean, protecting the family business, I don't know how I feel about that. On the one hand, I kind of get it. Like, hey, this guy who's on a lot of drugs, maybe he shouldn't be the face of our company. But at the same time, I feel like guys like Billy and Road Dogg and how bad that they were and bad a shape that they were, that stuff would have sorted itself out. I don't think Triple H necessarily had to pull them down. I think that's just kind of in Triple H's nature. I saw Stevie Richards talking about it with Maven on his podcast a couple of weeks ago. And Stevie said he once told Triple H, "Why are you protecting a spot you're not going to lose? That doesn't need to be protected." And that's just how Triple H operates. That's why him being like the master counter programmer, that's not just a Vince inherited thing. Like I think Triple H himself, that's something that he would absolutely do without the Vince priors. Now, as we know, everyone has since made up. As I mentioned earlier, Road Dogg literally works in creative now and has for many years and does seem to be a bit of like a right-hand man for Triple H. And we know that Billy Gunn, well, with AEW, has been welcomed back, even while he was in AEW, welcome back for the Hall of Fame induction with DX, and does seem to be a valued veteran, was on some of the reality shows. Their season of Tough Enough they did. So they've all made good. And by all accounts, I should say, and most importantly, the James gang, Kip and BG, the Voodoo Kin Mafia, the New Age Outlaws, they seemingly have turned their lives around. Say what you want about Road Dogg in creative or Billy Gunn's tag teams that he hangs out with in AEW. Both guys came out on the other side and thankfully aren't in the state of mind that they were when they were freaking hilarious. And over the years they've talked about this. We'll take this back to an article written by Raj Giri on Wrestling Inc. back in 2018. And this was actually one of the many times that that Kip went on with Chris Van Vliet, which we all know, the great wrestling interviewer. And he went on his show a few times and addressed this. And I just wanted to give what Billy had to say. I think he's talking to Chris Van Vliet here, asking if he apologized to Triple H for shooting on him. Of course I did. It was mostly for me because a lot of it was in my recovery program from being an addict. So a lot of it came from that, but I don't blame it all on that at all because all my actions and everything I did were me. It's more or less I don't feel guilty. I felt bad for saying all of those things because everything I said was not true. So I just wanted to clear the air. Like if I do something to you and I feel bad about it, I'll come back and apologize. You can take it or you don't have to take it. It's okay. It's not selfish. It's to help me and to stay where I need to stay safe. And I've been safe for 8 years, which is, again, awesome to hear. There's another interview he does with Chris Van Vliet from about a year ago when he talks about, Chris just asked him, when in your wrestling career were you not having fun? And he specifically said, when I was a really bad addict while I was in TNA. So there's an awareness of him. And thankfully, I don't know if it's for business purposes or personal purposes, but good on Triple H also for reconciling and for recognizing maybe that this was not a person who was in their right mind, still responsible for their actions and what they say, but not necessarily in their right mind when they said it. So this did have a great resolution. But God, it's fun to go back 20 years ago and think about the venom that some of Triple H's contemporaries had for him. That's content that'll never get old. All right, really quick over here, and then I got to run. But I want to talk to you guys about one more thing. Did you guys check out Wrestle Kingdom over the weekend? What do you guys think of it? What do you guys think of Wrestle Kingdom? For me, this was the first New Japan pay-per-view that I had watched since 2022, 2023, maybe 21. I'm not sure. Probably those post-pandemic shows where the fans weren't allowed to cheer. That's probably the last time I was really engaged in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And I wouldn't even say that their product was extra bad. I wasn't a fan of some of the people that they were pushing at the time, and I just didn't have the wrestling bandwidth to keep up with it anymore. And that's what happens, right? When a promotion kind of goes cold, you find reasons not to watch. And if you don't have to watch, I wasn't covering any wrestling over those years. I didn't watch. And I really hadn't planned on picking up any New Japan viewing. I would just get what I needed to get from other wrestling analysts. But the hook of the main event for the January 4th show, for the Tokyo Dome show, got me. So there I was, firing up, resubscribing to New Japan World, getting the email in all Japanese, then having the translated one sent, then having to verify through my bank that, yes, I did approve the transaction. Oh, I missed having New Japan World. That said, the apps have improved a lot. Like, there wasn't an Apple last time I was like watching the product. And it has pretty good functionality. In this era where all of the wrestling apps have gotten worse as in the last 10 years, that one's pretty good. Shout out to New Japan for that. They don't get a lot of credit for those kind of things. They get more credit for their wrestling. But shout out to them for that. I enjoyed the show. I really did. I thought the women's match was really, really good. Don't ask me the name of those competitors. I just thought it was really good. I thought the Wolf match, I can't think of his first name, the judo player, the one that was going up against Evil. Is it Chris Wolf? Do I have that right? Let me look it up. Yeah, real credible review I'm giving here when I'm saying the Wolf guy, and the women were pretty good. Let's see. It was, I want to say it's Chris Wolf, but I could be way wrong on that. Let's see. Aaron Wolf. Chris Wolf is his TNA name. That's what they would call him in TNA. They would call him Chris Lobo. Chris Coyote would be his TNA name. But I really enjoyed his match with Evil. I liked his fire up spots. I like his whole build. I think I like the whole idea of a judo wrestler in New Japan like that, who's just throwing people around. Like I can hang with that. Tsuji and Takeshita had a great title match. And I like the way the announcers were framing it as, Takeshita as the outsider, the all elite guy who, yes, had the most matches in the year, but isn't going to be the guy to carry the company through all the Road 2 shows. I thought the commentary did a good job of framing that, and that match was great. I shouldn't be surprised. Takeshita's pretty awesome in almost everything he does. And I'm so glad we've just got to see most of his career development in America, so we've got to see it very, very up close. But as he said after, he's still going to work plenty of dates with New Japan. It's a good piece to have in New Japan that's mostly connected to American wrestling and is building most of his lore and his legacy in the States, which I think is all very cool. And then you had the main event, what everyone was here for, Okada Tanahashi. It delivered. There was speculation, would it deliver? Can they deliver? Obviously, Okada, not exactly setting the world on fire with his matches right now in AEW. And we've seen with Tanahashi over the last couple of years, with the right opponent, he absolutely still can go, but he does kind of need the right opponent, which is understandable at his very, very advanced age. This could have been nothing. Like, this could have been a couple of moves, a Rainmaker, some air guitar, another Rainmaker, maybe try to hit a high fly float, whatever. And then over with, pinned, celebration, pomp and circumstance, fanfare. This could have been that, and I think it still would have been well received. But you had a really, really good match that told a really good story. And then what we were all here for, I think, was that post-match. That post-match was just really special. I'll be honest with you, though. When Jay White came out there, I thought he was just going to, Jay White on him. I thought he was going to beat him. I thought that was leading to some angle that was going to be paid off at, New Year's Dash. I really did. And then it was just the parade of cameos, though. And they were great. They were great. It's fun to watch people celebrating. It sounds funny, and it's like, are you living vicariously through them or what? But seeing people have that celebratory moment where they're just hugging and excited and crying and emotional, that's fun to watch. That kind of emotion, I think, is contagious. You're proud of the guy's career. You reflect on the time you're watching. Especially the way they did that parade of opponents, which I thought was really, really cool. You have a lot of those recent opponents and then some very old school ones that got brought out, and you have the memories. You also had the little the little match that took place, which I thought was kind of cool when they started beating each other up. That was pretty cool. The only thing that wasn't cool, obviously, was there was one person who was conspicuous by his absence, and we knew it would be, and he would take to social media to say he made every attempt to be there and did everything he could to be there, but just couldn't get it done. You know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Shinsuke Nakamura. Now, I get it. Companies are competing. There's, you've got AEW guys showing up there, so you don't want to cross-contaminate. The war isn't very competitive right now, but it's a bitter war. That's where we're at. It's not like, we're going, because there's not really a head-to-head for them to compare to every week. And the way that the metrics are out now, that would be harder than ever now to really compare these wrestling shows head-to-head objectively in that same way. But it's still a bitter feud. Like, there's a lot of bad feelings, it feels like, on both sides. So Nakamura ended up not being there, which again is a bummer. But it doesn't mean you can't enjoy Nakamura. Something I think I want to do on this show every couple of weeks is just give you guys like a wrestling streaming option of the week. Maybe like a match of the week to watch. As I mentioned, I was firing up the New Japan subscription for the first time in about 2 years. So once I got all that settled, as I was waiting on the day before, on the 3rd, I was waiting to watch Wrestle Kingdom. I ended up going in the archives, and I was wanting something that was just be like some comfort food to sort of dip my toe back in. I didn't want like something super, super complex, but I wanted something good. So I settled on a great, great match. That's the match I'm going to suggest to you guys this week. Go back, because it happened over a decade ago now. This is unbelievable. Go back to Wrestle Kingdom 10. We had Wrestle Kingdom 20 this past weekend. Go back to Wrestle Kingdom 10. Rewatch AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura. The match that they could never, ever live up to in WWE, despite having everything in place for it to work. I'd forgotten how great this match was. I forgot how great AJ Styles was pre-WWE. Not that he's been bad in WWE. You just get WWE-ized a little bit. This era for AJ Styles was awesome. He's post-TNA, and he was just about to come into WWE. So he eventually just got the look of like the motorcycle faux aces and eights guy, kind of Claire Lynchy, that he got going in TNA. Remember that? So it was that version of him. And he still has pretty good spring in his step, but obviously he had a lot more 10 years ago. Remember how old we thought of AJ Styles 10 years ago? Guy's just barely getting around to retiring now. And Shinsuke Nakamura, right at the peak of his powers, or at least as close to it as a lot of us were going to really see. Both guys end up coming into WWE after the match. The title ends up being held up, and there was a lot that happened the next night the next day at the New Year's Dash show. And that's really what catapulted Kenny Omega as the centerpiece of the Bullet Club. It all came after this match. And as a result of this match, you got to that new version of the Bullet Club, which carried us over into the next couple of years and eventually morphed into what became of AEW. At the same time, you had these guys in this match, along with Gallows and Anderson, going over to WWE. Now, one of these days, we'll take a deep dive into what impact those moves had, but you can't say that wasn't like ground shaking. And remember all the hype that was around these guys coming in. And a lot of that hype, yes, it's from their career, their legendary careers that both men already had at the time, but you had something fresh to look at and how great they were. And it also set a standard for when these guys meet in WWE, because they both came to WWE at the same time. So obviously, eventually there was going to be a collision course. And there was 2 years later, and it was a lot of matches, and they were very long, and it was all right. But if you want to know why all of us were clamoring for that match to happen at that WrestleMania, and why we're also disappointed in their matches in WWE, go watch this one. All right, guys. I think that's going to do it for me. Like I said, I have to hit the road in a little bit. I will most likely be talking to you guys next week, but I would just say stay tuned as to time and date. And again, if you have any late night sleeping and some punches to the head that might knock you out, if you're a fan of that sort of thing, stay tuned. See you guys.